What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. As you know, we are here to challenge and transform your thinking. And the way we do that is we find the best humans on the planet. We bring them on here to come on here and just talk real life things to help you think about life differently. So today I found a beautiful young lady. Her name is Laura P. Martin, and she is a trauma and relationship specialist and the woman behind the brand Healing to Happy, which has helped hundreds of women alchemize their trauma and create revolutionary relationships. I love that. I love that. So, Laura, thank you so much for being on Straight Talk. I really am glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
I'm so excited to be here. And I also just love the name. Straight Talk, No Sugar. I'm like, yes.
That's it. That's it. I mean, that's who I am, and that's how that name came about, because people are like, "Dang, Neena, you don't even put a little sugar on it," and I'm like, "Nope." Although I have to say I'm getting over my addiction to sugar, but I'm no sugar added. So, Laura, the way I like to start the show is I ask a little bit more about you. So I ask you, who are you? And whatever you want to share, we're going to take it from there.
Who am I? I am a daughter, a business owner, a friend, a sister. I'm the type of woman that, eats her chicken wings and has a nice bubbly glass of Prosecco on the side.
I love it.
I live my life with a wild amount of emotional honesty and delight. And I really love that so much, and I feel like when, we hear that people work in trauma and they work in relationships and they have all these things, we forget they're human, and they go through things, and I'm navigating things, and I'm a real human, and that's who I am.
Yeah, I love that. I really do. I love that you can be in that space, though, because that shows that you are also confident in who you are, right? To be able to live in that space of being emotional and being okay with that and being there. So I am a little curious, though, as to why the trauma piece, right? Why did you decide, when you got into helping women, that the piece you wanted to really focus on was happiness and trauma? Why that?
So really, I started Healing to Happy 1.0 version was a nutrition consulting company. So it was a gut brain, focused on gut brain connection. I was an IBS anxiety specialist, and really, it's my own journey. As coaches, is what we're going through. This is so therefore, I'm going to use my left brain to try and make sense of all the things that are happening in my life. That's what happened. And when I kept going on this health journey, I realized at the root was my trauma. I had been through big T trauma, sexual assaults, domestic violence, addictions, loss of my mother from addiction, eating disorder, which, was masked as gut recovery.
Yeah. Wow.
And so finally I got to a point where my health, I had been doing the whole gut health thing very perfectly. And the one thing I didn't look at was my trauma. And my body had broken out in these wild rashes all over. And it was fine for 8 months while it was on my backside. But then I had to deliver a speech in front of hundreds of people, and the rash decided to crawl across my face as I was talking about health. And I was like, oh, we really got to look at this. And that's what led me to studying trauma and going back and getting certified and doing all the kind of schooling, which led its way to relationships, because at the core, that's what was causing everything in my life, was the domestic violence, was the trauma with my family, which with friendships, with the lack of feeling belonged anywhere, rejection, and really starting to study what that is so that it could stop with me. And then from there, sharing the journey, and kind of, I always say accidental entrepreneur, like that wasn't the plan, but
right. I know, but sometimes, when you start to heal and you're going through, like I've been through domestic violence and all of that as well. And when you start to really focus on your healing, you can't help but to almost become an entrepreneur when you want to help others. It's like, I don't know about you, but that's like a lot of what I think about is how I'm going to help the women that I'm coaching. I don't focus on trauma, but I do have an NLP master certification. So I do sometimes use those tools. It's part of me is like, I'm so sorry that you've gone through all of that. And part of me is like, I am so glad you've gone through all of that. Does that make sense?
Because I've my greatest blessings. Like I don't have any malice against it. It's one of those things where I agree with you. It's a catalyst, and I wouldn't be who I am out that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you can kind of relate to that aspect as well.
I can. And I love that, because that shows also a lot of work in forgiveness, right? There's a lot of work when you're doing trauma. I'm sure that you do a lot of that as well, right? Those blockages that we don't realize that we're carrying, right? And that unforgiveness and trauma is real, and it really affects your life. And I mean, I just did a live not too long ago about, I do a lot of self work, and I do a lot of work with women, and I decided to go down this trail of self work, not like yours, but similar to where I was like, I have so many great things in my life, and when it comes to my weight, it's been something I've always battled. And so I took myself through a journey of like why, and kept going down this rabbit hole. Man, girl, I didn't realize that it came from a trauma that happened, that I totally did not connect to this. So I love that you do this kind of work. I love that. And I love that you've decided to take your experiences and what you've done to pour into someone else's life, because I really do think and believe that that is what we're here for, is to go through life experiencing all these beautiful and hard things that life gives us, but as a gift to give someone else.
Thank
Right?
you for that. Thank you for
Yeah.
that. It's so
Thank you.
true. Like anyone that goes through anything, like the thing that changed my life was like my knees on the floor, rock bottom, like suicide moment
Yeah.
at 24, where it was like, it wasn't that I wanted to not live anymore. It was just I didn't want to live this way or that way
Mhm.
anymore. And then I started to live my life as if like how, and I think of this often, like when I'm going through something, when I went through my recent breakup, when I have health scares, when there's like business things, like stuff like that,
Mhm.
it's always like, how do I want to tell my daughter this? Not that I have a daughter now, but it
Right.
was like, how do I want to tell this story? Now it's how do I want to tell the people in my community, right?
That's so great.
I'm always learning, but like in those moments, I wasn't a coach, I wasn't a mentor. No one cared about what I was doing because I'd made such a word blank in there of my life. But it got to the point where I was like, how do I want to say this? If one day my daughter is going through this, how do I want to tell her how I went through this? Right.
Wow.
And it started to keep me accountable in a way of like
Mm.
telling my story in that way, and ultimately led me to the space that I'm in now and leading this global movement. But it's like, if anyone's going through something and it's hard to really do it for yourself, because I know in those deep, deep moments, like it's hard to see beyond that.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're in it, how do you want to tell this story eventually?
That's so good.
Right? To someone, even if you don't want to be a coach or a mentor or whatever, it's like to your child that maybe you have, or a friend that may go through it. Like, how do you want to tell that story to know that, God doesn't make mistakes when we are entered into these vortex of our life. And so if you are going through a heavy time, it's like, instead of going like, why is this happening to me? Again, like the cliche phrase is like, why is this happening for me?
Right. I
Really
love that.
taking radical ownership over your life right now, instead of playing the victim role. Not saying that like you're at fault. That's that whole mindset thing where it's like domestic violence to me, or like the addictions and the drug, like all that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm not at fault for that. Like that just kind of happened, but I am responsible for the way that I was showing up for it and the way that I responded to it. And I didn't lean in, and I didn't get the help at the time. Like I wasn't taking
Right.
ownership over my life. I was letting life happen to me instead of, really realizing like I'm the architect of my life. I get to control the outcome in whatever way that is. And
So good.
it doesn't go exactly as planned, but I really can look at things in that kind of light right now and be like, okay, so why is this coming into my life, and what's the story that I want to tell because of it?
Right. That's so freaking powerful, Laura, because there's so many things you said there, right? I mean, there's so many things you said there. So there's things that happen to us and we can't control. And then there's those decisions and choices that we make, right? When somebody is in domestic violence, you didn't act or ask that person to inflict that on you. Although we made the choices that we made for whatever reason we made them, to stay, to forgive, to hopefully change the person, right? I went through all of those emotions. And but you're right, we have to take ownership of what our part is in that as well. And then you also talked about your addiction piece, right? And that is also taking an ownership of that as well, which is not easy, Laura. I'm sure that was a very difficult, very trying thing to do. And it's something, and I don't know if you agree with this, but it's something I feel that we have to get up every day and make that choice, right? Make that choice every day.
Mhm.
Because like you said, either that or life will will just give you what it'll give you, and you'll just be going through the motions and not actually living your life on purpose. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's
And
beautiful.
it's we kind of look at our lives in a way where it's like I realized I was addicted to being like the survivor, right? Like I was really good at just surviving and looking at my life in
Oh,
that way. And
wow.
even though,
Wow.
I had gotten out of domestic violence, it was still like with the money story or, the food story or like the diet. Like there was always this survival mode because that was an identity. So it's like also going beyond that, where it's like, yes, you're
Mhm.
responsible for staying and not leaving and what have you. Like on average, it takes 7 tries to even leave domestic violence. Like there is
Mhm. Mhm.
psychological warfare that happens there, but it's more than that. It's like taking responsibility for like what is coming into your life, right? And how you're responding and
So
why
good.
are we at that stance in our life where it's like for me it was like the domestic violence, but then also the health issues, but
Yeah.
then also the eating disorder, but then also the friendships that were falling through and also like
Mhm.
all of the
Mhm.
things that kept happening. And it was like, what's this addiction to chaos that we have right now? Oh, that's my nervous system. That's the survival mode. Because even though quote unquote it's not the best decision, like it's not the safest, it's not the good option,
Right.
that's actually what your nervous system craves. Like that turns your nervous system on. That's
Mhm.
exciting for your
Mhm.
nervous system. That feels
Mhm.
safe. Whereas like meditating and being in the space and actually having softness and accumulating wealth and doing these things that are actually safe, that wasn't actually safe to your nervous system. So it's really
Right.
witnessing what am I calling into my life right now? Because anything that's happening in your current reality is actually what your nervous system deems as safe. That's it.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
so we can sit and we can write our post-it notes. Oh, we freaking want on the boards, and we can read them, and they're perfect. And don't I do them? Like I'm not making fun of them. I do them,
Right.
and it doesn't really matter because your body is always going to protect its fears. That is literally
Mhm.
what your amygdala is
Mhm.
for. Like that
Mhm.
is what your RAS system is for. Like it is always scanning for danger to keep you safe. So if you're sitting there and you're like, well, like I'm doing the manifestation work, I'm listening to the podcast, like why isn't it working? It's like because your body, you haven't leaned all the way in to what your body
Right.
deems as like as safe. And so it's like going even beyond just like leaving the things. It's like, why is that coming into your life? why
Mhm.
why is this the safe place for your nervous system to land? And is there something we can do to start to shift and mold and really look at what that fear is or what that habit is really protecting you from, so we can witness
Right.
fear with a little bit more grace and light and understanding.
That is so powerful. That is so powerful. So when you started your this coaching that you're doing now with these women, what is it that what are you taking them through? Like if somebody's listening to you right now and saying, "Oh my God, I totally relate to Laura right now," right? Because like I told you, these amazing people that listen to my show are very good at kind of following up with me on emails and texting and doing all of that great stuff. So tell me what your process is with your clients.
Yeah, so we start with self-knowledge, healing, and then embodiment, right? The acronym SHEET. And so self-knowledge is you got to understand how you work. Like I still keep the food aspect alive. You have to understand that to heal your trauma, if your body isn't in the healthiest state, we're just
Right.
still repeating things at different realms. Like your body has to be able to handle this stuff. And this is why, I work with a lot of spiritual leaders, a lot of spiritual healers. They forget the human shell. Like it's like I am
Right.
processing, I'm doing the breath work, I'm doing the yoga, I'm doing it. And I'm like,
Right.
there's still the human. Like in
Yeah, yeah.
this 3D world, we still have to nourish her and process her
Right.
and
Right.
understand her and understand our hunger cues and get our blood sugar. Like that is a big piece. And then we have to understand our nervous system states, so that like when you enter in a room, like specifically dating, right? Like I work with people in dating and calling in the loves of their lives and creating this like orgasmic love story of the ages. We have to understand where our nervous system is at because they're going to match us. Like right now, you're probably getting a little hyped because you feel my sympathetic nervous system be like, da, 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 like that is where I was
Right.
at. Whereas I can like drop down and be a little slower, and you can match me in that, right? And understanding our nervous system so that we can actually call in the right type of energy that we want people to
That's
meet us
good.
on, and we can start to adapt that. And then we get into the healing phase, right? So we have to actually be consistent with our nutrition. We have to be consistent, especially when we're going through trauma. Consistency is so important.
Mhm.
Routines, waking up, doing the things that we say we're going to do, and actually making sure that we're doing it.
Right.
Getting into that healing state where we're
Mhm.
nourished, we're healthy, we're getting out of our own way, we're looking at our stuff, we're stepping into our confidence, and then we're the embodiment of it, where you eventually don't have to think about this stuff, right? Like at first, when we're in our healing phases, it's like, did I meditate? Did I get sun? Did I eat my vegetables? Like the checklist, very masculine structure. Eventually you get to a state of your healing where you don't have to, like, I don't think about these things anymore.
Right.
They're just states of beings, and it just becomes an embodiment of your work, and you're actually free to then go explore other outlets in your life, which is the most beautiful thing. And I mean, that's through a series of different programs that I do that. But like, even like right now, it's called the Seductress that we're doing. And that's all about creating invitations in your life, understanding the energy that you have, understanding your nervous system, so that you no longer have to base, dating on an algorithm like Bumble or something like that, like,
wow, that's good.
Move through things in that way. And then we'll move into nutrition pieces, like with Maven's Metabolism. Like there's so many different outlets that we work through, because everyone is so multifaceted. It's not just one thing. It's not like, oh, we go do, a 5-series breathwork thing. It's like, how do you understand yourself, and how do you write the permission slip that you cannot get this wrong? You cannot get this wrong. As long as you're trying, like my biggest, like you will always be on the right path as long as you're trying. You're just finding, like Thomas Edison, took him 1,000 ways to make a freaking light bulb, like we're just trying out the different paths. And so it's like looking at, like, oh yeah, my body piece isn't actually as good for me. I actually have to heal it this way. I have to be the embodiment piece here. And we start to compartmentalize what it is that we need. So ultimately we can call in the love story of the ages and have the things that we want, and stop repeating these toxic patterns and manipulation and abuse and narcissism and the things that we see very common, I guess would say. I think we're just kind of a little sensitive in our modern day, but in modern dating, these are the things that I see happening most often. So walking people, that's a very long-winded answer of what I do, but
no, that's wonderful. No, that's great. That's what I wanted. That's what I wanted, because it is multifaceted, right? What you do as well. And I think that, people, they need to hear that, right? I think I love the fact that you did share all of that, because it's not just about the trauma piece. You talked about the nutrition piece. You talked about the energy piece. There's a lot of pieces here, right? And so that's why I think it's important to have people like you come on the show, because we are multifaceted, and one coach is not, they shouldn't anyway just deal with one thing. I think that it's good for somebody to tell you, okay, this is the journey that we're going to take you on, and it's not going to be overnight, and you're going to mess up, and you're going to kick yourself in the butt sometimes, and that is actually okay. And I also love that you started with such authenticity from the beginning. Like, I still have to deal with my stuff too, and that's honest, right? And I always, I'm a straight talker, right? So I always say, when you see all of these ginormous gurus out there doing their thing and they look like they're all that, believe me, they're not. They have a whole team that makes them look this good. And they are struggling and going through certain things too. Maybe not everything, but certain things, right? Because we are multifaceted. Hello, right? So tell me, Laura, like, if somebody's listening and they just wanted to have like one thing that you would say to them, hey, you know what? Why don't you start here? Just do this thing at least. What would that be to you, you think? What is like that important starting piece?
Take radical ownership over everything that's happening right now, whether it's your health,
wow. Love that.
Whether it's your relationship, whether it's your finances, right? Money, sex, power. There's a reason why rock and roll refers to it so much. The 3 things that we want. Look at what's consistently showing up in your life and notice it. Instead of being like, I want a quick fix thing where we go do these challenges and we do these eliminations and we, swipe for a few days and think we're going to meet the one person that's going to be the love of our life. Like all these things. And then we wonder, why do I keep dating men like this? Why do I keep getting cheated on? Why does this keep happening? Why do I keep having the same fight with the same partner or different partner, whatever? Why does this keep happening? It's like, the only common denominator in all of that is you.
Right.
And instead of playing the victim role in that, can you see how empowering that is, because you were the artist of your life? I just got reminded of this at a summit that I was at this weekend, where, you remember the video game Sims?
Yeah.
That was my favorite video game growing up, right? Like I loved it. That's all. We only got 1 hour of technology, and I always chose to play The Sims. And I forgot like how that is actually what life is now. Like I would create these mansions and these loves, and I would always try to get them to, have sex and like do the thing. And it was like, I'm like, oh, that's literally what life is now though. Like you get to create your reality as long as you start to take responsibility. That's it. It's sitting in that radical ownership. And I get that's hard, but we can start to look at things from a different lens by what went right, what went wrong, what do I want to do differently? for everything that's coming in.
Mm-hmm.
But first, we have to witness it in radical freaking honesty.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a scary place to go. That is a scary place to go. And I think that it might be scary, guys, if you're listening out there and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I even begin? I don't know about you, Laura, but do you also like journaling? Like, do you believe strongly in journaling?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
journals back from like the age of 7.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, it is because it shows you progression.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is because it's one thing to sit and think about it, it's another thing to write about it. Because I think there's something very powerful that comes from writing it as opposed to just thinking about it.
Mhm.
Especially what Laura's telling you guys, right? Like to like really take radical ownership. And sometimes to do that, because our brain is there to protect us, we'll think about it for like 2 seconds and then our brain will move on to the laundry or the TV show or whatever we want to do because it is scary. It is scary. And your brain is like, oh, hell no. I've been protecting her or him from this for 20 years, 30 years, right? And now you're going to try to think about it. We're not doing that, right? But so I just was wondering if that's like a practice for you to journal, right? Or to ask people to do that.
Daily, like even currently right now, like with everything happening in the cosmos, I like to blame everything on the moon, but everything that's happening in the cosmos, like right now, is like what I was literally working on all day is like writing my story, like what has actually happened in my life in this like quick 30 years. And my birthday's next week. I was like, what is my story? You know, like how do I want to witness this with a lens of curiosity and wonder? And what are my chapters in that story? Because there's evolutions. I've lived like 4 lifetimes in this tiny little lifetime, like so many things. So it's like witnessing that and being like, oh, okay, so now we're in this next decade, whatever, some change. Like, what do we then want to create? Right? Again, the radical ownership. I think journaling is a perfect space. And also like to touch on, this is the difference between like what I do and say what a therapist does, right? Like I don't necessarily believe, yes, I'm writing my story right now. I know this is contradictory to what I literally just said, but I don't necessarily believe we have to always go back to the origin. Like we don't have to always go back to like, let me blame mom and dad and like this happened and whatever. Cause sometimes that space doesn't feel good. Sometimes we can't remember it because of trauma. Like I couldn't for a very long time remember my childhood. So I was like, I'm broken. I can't go backwards. Like, I don't know what to do. You guys just keep asking me. And yeah, but like, you can just witness what's currently happening in your life and how can you start to create safety around that, right? So if you are seeing relationship patterns come up, it's like, oh, so when I feel that red flag in my body, how do I want to honor that? What would bring me back to safety? What actually feels for me right now? You know, same with that. Like in my phone, I have like a current like dopamine checklist where it's like sometimes when I'm not feeling safe and I'm not having these things, it's like these things that actually remind me what safety is. Because the way our brain works is if we go into a triggered state or we go into a sad state or something happens and we're activated, our critical thinking brain literally shuts off. Like you are, this is why when someone's asking a question, you're like driving and you're like, I don't know, left or right. Like, I don't know. Like our brain shuts down. So if you have a checklist in your phone, which I just have like iPhone, so notes literally pinned to the top, dopamine checklist, it's things that I know will calm me down. Things that I know will into it back into my ventral state, which is your like safe state. We have 3 states, so shutdown state, sympathetic, which is your very like aggressive, fighting, high strung one, and then we have ventral, which is our safety. So it's like, what brings you back into your safety, and can you witness that after you take your radical ownership and do things? Can you start to witness that and be like, okay, so when I'm feeling unsafe or when I'm not acting like myself or when I'm being triggered and snotty to my partner, like what are the things that actually bring me back to self? Because right now I'm not acting self and I know I can't actually think outside of my reaction. So do I have a reminder of what that is?
Yep. You know, because one of the things that I always preach on too is the fact that things just are, and then we add an emotion to it, right? So yeah, there are things that are, of course, hard on people: losing someone you love, breaking up on a relationship that was important to you, losing a job, maybe. You know, grieving is a real thing, but a lot of times we just add an emotion to something. Somebody said something, you're angry, but why are you angry? It was just a saying, or it was just something that was, done. And so I always tell people, also look at something like just like neutral, and then decide, because now you're activating your brain, decide what emotion you want to add to that, right? When your boss said this, do you want to add anger to that, right? Do you want to then do you want to add anger, or do you want to add maybe something fun to it, or funny, or exciting, or whatever it is, right? We always have this dichotomy that happens within us. And I think what you're talking about is super important, because when we start to take ownership of who we are and what we're deciding we're going to add our emotion to, that is how you win. That is how you win, because then you start to get up every day for you. And if you can get up every day for you, right, Laura, then you can get up for your partner, you can get up for your kids, you can get up for your job, you can get up, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And like feeling your emotion, like even if it is anger, can you let that just be it without collapsing your emotion and being disappointed that you're angry, and then you're disappointed that you're disappointed, and then the emotion is compounded and it goes on. Like you can't honestly cry for more than 7 minutes in my body, but people will be sad. I was sad about the addictions and the loss in my partner for 2 freaking years. Like, granted, there was trauma involved, but it was like, now, like this recent breakup, it was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then we compound that emotion because it's fully expressed, and we move through things, and then we're easily can move on. But we hang on to our past because of the story we tell ourselves, and we just don't let ourselves get angry or sad because we're so afraid of our anger and our sadness, because society has deemed these emotions as bad. This is why I was saying like emotional honesty is my thing. Like we talk about sacred rage and we talk about sacred sadness. Like this is such a thing in my program, because it's like then you just let yourself feel it, because then you're not afraid of it, and then it doesn't loom over you, and then also you get to feel the ecstatic orgasmic joy that life gets to have inside of you. Like, because here's the thing, if we want this like elation and this joy and this pleasure and this play, like there's a flip side that's potentially like we're capping ourselves. If we want this, like we have to also be okay that maybe this will happen, and fully being able to sit in that with knowing like it's just going to be like a moment in time. It's not, you're not going to be sad forever. Like yes, depression is a real thing, but also it does start to shift when we do the right thing. And if you're in a world like this, you're probably already doing the right thing to kind of better understand how your mental state is and how to support that. So can you trust yourself in the space of the crunchy feelings, and knowing that like your swamps of sadness are not going to last forever, but to just feel them. Like in my world, we call it burrito, like we call it burrito days. We're like, just go have a burrito day, enjoy it, put on a sad movie, let yourself cry, feel it. Tomorrow, I bet you're going to be dancing around in your underwear. I bet. Like, go let it happen.
That's right. I love it. That's so good. That's awesome. And I know that people are probably like, oh man, this is amazing. So Laura, I cannot let you leave without telling my people where to find you, because I know that you're probably connecting to a bunch of women right now. I love your energy. I love what you bring to the table. I really, really do. I'm glad you were here. I'm glad we had this conversation, and I'm glad that all of these amazing people got to hear it. So Laura, how do people get in contact with you, woman?
Thank you so much, Neena. I love this. I love you. I'm happy that you're feeling it.
Thanks.
I'm most active on Instagram, like everyone in the world. Over at it's Laura Patricia Martin, so ITS Laura Patricia Martin, and then our content creation programs, all that kind of stuff, is over at Healing to Happy. So Healing to Happy. That's also our podcast name. So that's where everything in the portal of the 2 spheres work. You'll find me either one you pop into. You're going to see my little mugs. So
that's awesome. Oh, Laura, thank you so much for being here on Straight Talk. I really appreciate your energy and everything you talked about. Very, very wise for only 30. And happy birthday next week. Happy birthday. It's amazing. So thank you for being here. Really, I appreciate you. Thank you. And guys, thank you so freaking much. I know you guys have fallen in love with Laura. I told you guys I find the best humans on the planet and I bring them on here, and she is definitely one of them. So make sure that you guys follow her, listen to her podcast, all that great stuff. I'm going to link all of her information below in the show notes so you don't miss a thing. But I'm really grateful to you guys. I love you so much. And yeah, keep it sharing, keep it coming, keep it liking, because I am super stoked with this community and everything you guys are doing. So until next time.